our third method of animation, which is using keyframes. We are going to spend some time on this one because there are important details we cannot skip if we truly want to master how keyframes work. So to make things easier to understand, we will break this method into 5 parts, with each part building on the previous one. So please bear with me, especially if you are serious about understanding how keyframes actually work. Now, before you start using keyframes, there is one very important thing you need to understand. Anytime you animate with keyframes, you need at least 2 points, and you need to answer the simple questions I told you about at the beginning of this video. Let's start with the first part of this method. It's simple animation from point A to point B. Let's start with the 2 points. For any animation to happen, you need a minimum of 2 points, point A and point B. Point A is where the animation starts, and point B is where the animation ends. So basically, you define how you want it to look at the beginning, and that will be your point A, and how you want it to look at the end, hence your point B. Once you have those 2 points, the animation can happen between them. But to do that, you now have to answer the 3 questions. So now we are going to apply that while animating using keyframes. So the first question you need to ask yourself is, what do I want to do? Or what change do I want to make? In this case, what we want to do is move our logo from off screen and have it slide into the center after some time. So we want to move from point A to point B. So first, we clearly define the result we want. Then question 2, you then ask yourself, what control, and these guys are called controls or parameters, what control or parameter can help me achieve that result? The first is, what do you want to do? Now the second is, what control or parameter will help you get that kind of a result? You can experiment with all of these controls to see what they do. But in this case, the control that gives us the result we want is the position parameter. Because with the position parameter, we can move the logo left and right, up and down. Basically, you can just enable the transform here, and you have access to this on-screen handles, and you can move it anywhere on the screen. So the position parameter is what we are going to use to animate. Then the question 3 is, when do you want it to start and when do you want it to end? Now, the start position, you place your playhead where you want it to start. In this case, we want it to start at frame 0. Then you go to the parameter that you want to give you that result, and we set our first keyframe. And you know a keyframe is set when the gray diamond changes to red like this. At the start, we want the logo to be off screen. So we move it outside the frame like this. This becomes our point A. Then we decide where we want the animation to end, maybe after 1 second or 2 seconds. And you can use the shift plus arrow key to move the playhead 1 second forward, regardless of your frame rate. So if we move 1 second ahead, this becomes our point B. Now at this point, we want the logo to be visible on screen. So we simply move it back into the center like this. And DaVinci Resolve will automatically add another keyframe. Now when we play this back, the logo slides in from off screen to the center like this. And just like that, you have officially created your first animation using keyframes. Also with these arrows here, you can quickly jump from one keyframe to another just like this. And if you want to remove or reset keyframes, you can click this icon here. I don't quite know the exact name of it, but clicking it will reset the keyframes for that parameter. So you can start all over again in case you made a mistake or you have to do something else. Something else to keep in mind is this. Once you set a keyframe, if you move your playhead to a different position on the clip, and then accidentally or intentionally change a parameter that already has keyframes on it, Resolve will automatically create a new keyframe at that position. Now, another important detail to understand is this. If you use the keyframe beside the main control name, in this case the transform, it will automatically add keyframes to all the parameters under it, like the zoom, position, rotation, and the rest. Which means now if you move anywhere else on the same clip and make changes, those changes will automatically be recorded with keyframes. This feature becomes very useful when you need to animate multiple parameters at the same time, because now all of them can be animated together. And that brings us to the second part of this third method, that is animating different parameters together. Now, for the part B of this particular third method, let's reset all our keyframes. And now, let's apply the steps again. First, we have to define what we want to do. We want our logo to zoom out while rotating and moving from the top corner to the bottom corner. So, the second thing now is what controls or parameters can help us get these particular results. We know the zoom, we can use these ones. We can use this zoom option, and also the position, we already know we can use this one. The rotation, we know we can use this one. So now what we are going to do is, when do we want it to start and when do we want it to end? So we want it to start after 1 second. So we jump our playhead 1 second ahead, and we set keyframe using this particular keyframe so that all of them will be set at once. And then for this point A, this is what we want it to look like. And the position, we want it in the top corner. So we enable this transform so that we can use the on-screen handles. And with this, we can now move it to that top corner like this. And we now move a few frames forward, let's say 2 frames ahead, 1, 2. Then we make the changes we want for point B. So at point B, we want it to be here at a smaller size like this. And also we want it to rotate 360 degrees. 360. Now when we play, now we have the animation, but it doesn't look smooth at all. It still looks stiff and robotic. Let's fix that. That takes us to part C of this keyframe method, which is, yes, you guessed it right, easing and curves. The simplest and fastest way to ease your keyframes in and out is by simply right-clicking the keyframes and selecting ease in or ease out, just like this. You can select from any of these options depending on what you are going for. The limitation with this though is, if you have a lot of keyframes, it can slow you down, which brings us to a more flexible option. Now, if you are already confident with this, you can skip ahead. But if you are like me and you actually want to understand how these things work, instead of just copying things blindly, then let's walk through a few details here. As my anatomy and physiology instructor always said, when you listen, you learn new things. So to do easing, click this keyframe icon here or the one below to reveal keyframes. Either of them works, and now you have all your keyframes over here. If you want to change the timing, you can select it like this, then drag it far away like this. Now when you play, it will slow the animation down like this. And if you want it very fast, we have to and also drag them closer. And now when you play, you have it like this, very fast. Now, because we already add the easing, let's reset that so we can use these ones linear. So now that we have reset everything, let's take a look at what these things mean. When you come over here, this is for the parameters. All of these controls, or same as these guys. And from there, you have this curve, which is these guys, and the keyframe lane, these ones. Now, let's walk through a few things here. Just like before, we can collapse this transform and everything under it will be hidden. So the same logic applies here. You can click this arrow and everything will be gone, just like that. You can also click it, bring it back. This is the name of the clip or the footage you are animating. In this case, what we have is this. So that is the name. Here, you can see they are color coded. So if you come over here, you can see the blue is for zoom. And now that is this blue curve. The yellow is for the X position. This one here. So they are color coded. You can just look at the color and it will give you an idea what you want to change. This curve will either turn on or off the curves over here. So for example, if you turn this curve off, you see that the blue curve is gone because we turn off the zoom, which has color blue. You can also do the same for the rest, like this, and it will be gone. But if you want to do it for all of them, and just use this transform option. And now you have all of them on or all of them off, just like that. These lock icons, let's say for example, you're happy with the changes you have made with a specific parameter, but you want to change others. So the one you are satisfied with, in this case, let's say the position, you can lock it. And once you lock it, you see now all the rest look like this. You can now click anywhere outside the curve and Command A to select all of them. Now you can make any changes and those that you have locked will not be affected, but it's only the unlocked ones that will be affected, just like you can see here. And like before with these arrows too, you can jump from one keyframe to another like this. You can also reset keyframes. Now we have no animation because no keyframes. Let's go back. Okay, now with that out of the way, let's come over here. Let's collapse this. Let's come over here. This is pointer mode. With this selected, you can select any of these and make any change that you want to it. This box lets you select only a group of keyframes, and any change you make will only be applied to those inside that particular box. Like you can see, anything outside like these ones will not be affected. It's going to be affecting only the selected keyframes inside that particular box, like this. This hand just changes your cursor to hand mode if that is something you prefer. Now this add keyframe. What this does is once it is selected, you can now click on any of these curves and it will add a keyframe, just like this, just like this. And you can add as many keyframes as you want. But if we unselect it and we click, there will be no keyframes added. This flatter handle mode will make more sense when we are talking about the next part of this keyframe method. Now, if you want to ease in or out, this arrow will help you get that. You can choose from any of these. And here, if you want with this, you can zoom into the curve like this. Or if you also want, you can just use this to pop it out. This way, you can expand it to get more flexibility. You can see everything, your keyframe lanes, the curve, and you can start working with it. Now, another thing I want to point out is these three dots. They help you to decide how you want the panel to look. I have mine set to display parameters with keyframes. This means it's only those parameters with keyframes that you will see over here. If we make it display all parameters, we will see all of these ones here also, even though they don't have keyframes like this. And now you have all of these parameters, all of them will be here too. So this is what can be handy. Let's say you have keyframes on almost all of them. You can collapse some of them like the transform, you collapse them here like this, and only the transform and everything under the transform will be gone like that. But if you want to collapse everything, then you use this one. Okay, so let's go back. You can just, they are self-explanatory. You can just read it and set it to your liking. So that's kind of it for this panel. Now, let's do for our keyframes, in and out. So we click outside here and Control A to select all. Come over here and select in and out. And now when we go back and play, we have it like this, just like before. But if you are wondering, what about the step in and step out options? If you click this, if you select it, it will jump from one keyframe to another instead of continuous motion. It will jump from A to B to C like that. So for example, you see our curve change. So now when you play, because we set it to step in, this is what it will look when you now play. It will jump from one keyframe to the other, just like that. So if you have multiple keyframes, it will jump from here to there to the other one. But it doesn't work with rotation. You can play with it to get the kind of look that you want. Okay, now let's reset to as ease in and out. If you want, you can also make any changes here. Let's pop this out. This. And now you can grab any of these with these handles, can change how it looks. Like this. You get it. This one like this. Depending on the look of the graph, the animation will also change behavior. Can make any changes that you want. And now when we play, look at what will happen. Instead of smooth animation, you have this. That is what the graph can give you. So it depends on you, whichever way you want it. The limitation with the keyframes though is it doesn't have motion blur, but the Glory Animator has. Speaking of the Glory Animator, imagine spending hours adjusting keyframes and shaping curves just to get your animation to look right, only to realize it's not exactly what you wanted at the end. And now you have to start all over again. Well, you don't have to go through that stress anymore. With the Glory Animator, all you have to do is drag and drop it onto your image, and instantly you have access to 28 professional animations in seconds. Just select the one you want. The moment you click to set your first keyframe and start your animation, that same click with Glory Animator is already you selecting the result you would normally have to build manually. Instead of starting from scratch and shaping curves step by step, you are only choosing the finished motion you want. That one click saves you all the extra clicks, the curve adjustments, and the wasted time. Easily switch from one animation style to another. Adjust the timing and refine it to look just the way you want in seconds. Stop wasting time on curves. Stop rebuilding animations from zero and start from precision. Try the Glory Animator today and finish your projects on time. You can learn more about it in this video. The link is in the description below. Okay, now let's continue. So far what we have is continuous motion. But what if you want the image to animate in? Stay for a while and then animate out. That brings us to part E of the keyframe method, which is hold and change. So now to get that hold and change, let's reset everything here and start all over. Let's say we now have our size like this, just like before. Following our format again, what do we want to do? We want it to start off screen, come on screen, stays for a while before it animates off screen again. So now what parameter will help us get that? We know is the position. So now when do we want it to start? We place our playhead where we want it to start, in this case at the start, and we set a keyframe. Then move a few frames forward. So shift arrow key, one frame forward, and then set another keyframe. This is what we want it to look. So now point A, we want it to be off screen. So with our arrow key, we then jump back to point A, the first keyframe. We then slide it off screen like we did earlier, like this. And now when you play, you have it like this. We now know how to smoothen it out. So we will do that but later. Let's say from here now we want it to slide out. We want it to animate out. If we move a few frames forward again, let's say now we are here and we move forward and we slide it out like this. Now when we play, look at what will happen. It will just be continuous. Did you see that? Again, it will just be continuous. When we play, look at what happens. But why is it like that? That is because now what we are saying is at the first keyframe, we are saying we want it to be off screen, which it is. Second keyframe, we want it to be on screen, and it is. Third keyframe, we told it to be off screen. And since there is no keyframe in between the second and the third, to tell it to stay, it won't stay because we did not ask it to stay. That's why it went off screen. So now, if we really want it to stay, this is how it works. We reset, we get back the size, and now we do this. If you don't do this extra step, you always run into that problem. This really threw me off many times when I started learning keyframes. So now we set our keyframe position. We want it to be out of screen, so we put it out. And after 1 second, we want it on screen. So like this. And a Resolve will automatically add a keyframe. Now when we play, we have it just like before. If we want it to stay, for how long do we want it to stay? Let's say for 2 seconds. So we move forward for 2 seconds. 1, 2, and then we set another keyframe. But this time we are not going to make any change, which is why this step is named hold and change, which means from now our second keyframe to our third keyframe, we want it to stay like this. We don't change anything. Then we move a few frames forward depending on when you want it to now animate out. So 1 second, then we can now make a change and the Resolve will automatically add a keyframe like this. And now when we play through, we have it like this. It starts off screen, then slides in, stays for the 2 seconds before it moves out, just like that. And just like that, you have now officially made that kind of animation. You can apply this to anything you want, how long you want it, and it will always do as you tell it. Okay, so now let's smooth it out since you already know how to do it. Just come over here and we now have the position controls. Since we did not animate the zoom this time, you see, we don't have the zoom option here now. But with this, you can say show all and it will be displayed. That's not what we are going for. So now we just click outside here, Control A or Command A, and you select from here ease in and out. And now when you play, you have it like this. One thing about the keyframes is if you don't manually adjust the curves, the default settings, when it is just 1 second, sometimes you don't feel the ease out and the ease in that well. But if you have it stretched out, you may feel it just like this. And remember earlier I told you I will talk about this particular flatter handle mode when we are dealing with this step. Now that it is enabled, pay close attention to how the curves look. You can see everything is flat. Now you also see the movement comes in straight, stays, then it moves out. Now when we uncheck it and we still have all our keyframes selected and change it to ease in and out, Do you see the difference? The curves, let's zoom in. The curves are no longer straight, but they have these curves. So now when you play, this is how it will look. Let's play it. You see, it doesn't stop, but it gives you some continuous movement before it finally moves out. So that is why that particular option is necessary if you are going for something where you have it to stay static before it finally goes out. That's something I wanted to point out. And just like that, you can now make all kinds of animations using keyframes. What you want is like this. You want it to come in, then stays, but does not animate out until the end of the clip before it actually animates out. How do you get something like that? I'm in this until the end before it animates out. To get that, let's now go to the next part of this method. So far, everything we have done has been inside the edit page. But now, we are finally stepping into the Fusion page. Now, before you panic, if you are scared of Fusion, watch this video in the description. It's about the core fundamentals that you need, which will help you to do almost anything you want in the Fusion page. So if that interests you, check that video out. There are different ways to go to the Fusion page. You can just place your playhead over this particular clip and click this button to go to the Fusion page like this. But in this case, let's use a different option. Or another thing you can do is let's disable this. Or we have nothing. Or let's place it here so we can see we don't have anything. Then come over here to the effects. Make sure you are on this effect tab. And drag and drop this fusion composition onto your timeline. And make sure your playhead is over that particular fusion composition. Now click this tab and go to the fusion page. Now before you panic, do you notice anything familiar here? We have a media pool, just like on the edit page, where we can bring in our logo. On the edit page is a layer. In Fusion, it becomes a node. On the edit page, you have your effects. We grab the effects from. Here, the same thing. When you come over here, when you click it, you also have a bunch of effects over here. Just like on the edit page. Aside that, on the edit page, we had this inspector. Here, we also have the inspector. On the edit page, we had the keyframe symbol, if you remember. And here, we also have it. It appears below your timeline. Just like that. You still have your viewer right here to preview your work. We have on the edit page preview also. You still have your inspector over here where you control settings. So even though Fusion may look different at first, a lot of the foundations are actually the same. The biggest difference is that Fusion gives you deeper controls. That is the only big difference. And once you are here on the Fusion page, let's walk through a few things. This is your media out node. This node is what will take whatever we do over here and send it back to the edit page. What we are going to do here is almost the same as what we will be doing on the edit page. It's just that here the setup and the names are different. Now you can connect it to this particular media out node. And just like that, this, when you now come over here to the edit page, you will see it here. As I was saying earlier, the function of this media out node is to take whatever we have connected to it and show it on the edit page. On the Fusion page, you have two displays. You can see what you are working with over here in this viewer 1 or in this viewer 2. If you want to select which one you want to use, you just have to press 1 or 2 on your keyboard. If you press 1, it will show on the viewer 1. If you press 2, It then will show on the viewer too, like this. You can use this particular button to display only one of them, like this. For us to make any changes to this, we have to also approach it similar to the steps we used while animating using keyframes. Well, first, we have to ask ourselves, what do we want to do? So in this case, what we want to do is we want to decrease the size of this particular image. Then we will ask, what node will help us get that particular result? So there are a lot of nodes. These are some of the nodes. But if you are not familiar with what these nodes are, you can just place your cursor over it and it will tell you the name. And you can just click and drag it over here. And you now have it here. Or another way to bring in a node is to press Shift space bar. And you have this, like this. And now you can type anything you want. But if you don't type anything, you can scroll to see all kinds of nodes. And even those that you made for yourself, you can find them also here, like these ones. Okay, so now that out of the way, is what node will help us to decrease the size. On the edit page, we use this transform parameter. Fusion page, the node that can help us get the same result is transform. So shift space when you search transform like this, and you will see different kinds of transforms. In this case, we are going with this particular transform, the one with the XF. And now we select it, it shows over here. And when you click add or enter on your keyboard, it will then be added. But now, as you can see, it's not connected to anything. Now, the third question you ask yourself is, how do I connect the node? So first, you ask, what do I want to do? Second, what node will help me get that result? And third, you ask, how do I connect the node? So to connect the node, hold down your shift key while you are grabbing the node and drag it onto this particular line until you see the line turn into blue yellow. A part of it is blue and the other part of it is yellow. Once you see that, while still holding down your shift key, you can now release the mouse and it will be connected just like this. Or another way to connect the node is before you bring it in, you want to connect it here. So you select this particular node and now you search the transform, and when you click enter, it will be connected just like this. So now in the inspector, as I said earlier, you also have this controls. So they just have different names. On the edit page, you have it called zoom. But on the Fusion page, it is called size, and it does the same thing. We use the size control to zoom in and out, just like this. And now with this size, as you can see on the viewer 1, the size remains the same. The reason is because we are looking at our original image in the viewer 1. And in the viewer 2, it looks like this because we are looking at the media out node in the viewer 2. And this transform has affected the image when we adjusted the size. So now this result that we see here being displayed by the media out is what we will see on the edit page like this. So now with that out of the way, let's now focus on this. So let's collapse our media. Let's now collapse the media 1. Can just come over here and like this, and we have only this one. Okay, so moving forward with this, now we go to the inspector, and on the edit page, we have position, which will move the image left and right. Here in the in the Fusion page, we have center, which will also do the same thing. X will move it left and right. The Y will move it up and down, just like that. Like on the edit page, you just double click and it will reset the same thing like it's here. On the edit page, we had angle rotation. In this case, we have angle and it will also rotate. So you just have similar things. All of these, we have similar ones on the edit page, but they are not our focus for now. So now let's do the animation here on the Fusion page. Now that we have this, we go to the start, and just like before, we set a keyframe and then move it off screen like this. Then 1 second into the clip, we want it on screen. Since we are using 30 frames per second here, we are now going to frame 30, which is 1 second. On the Fusion page, the shift arrow key does not work. Jump the playhead 1 second ahead because the Fusion page deals with frames. So frame 30 is 1 second. Now we are going to bring it back on screen like this. And then we'll move a few frames forward. So we want it to come on screen like this. Now when you play, you have it like this. You see these handles because we have this transform selected. You can just click outside the node like this, and now it is no longer there. You play through it and you have it like this. You have our first animation, the Fusion page. Now, you just like before, you can also move from one keyframe to another by using these arrows. So now that we are here, we want it to stay for how long? Let's say 2 seconds. So if we want it to stay for 2 seconds, it means that will be on frame 90. So we set another keyframe and then we want it to animate out from here. So let's say we want it to animate out after another second, which will be plus 30 frames, and 90 plus 30, 120. So here we then animate it again and out. So now when we play, we have like this: animates in, stays, then animates out. So really, the concepts are not changing. We are just learning the Fusion language for tools you already understand. So you see, Fusion is not as complicated as it looks. Okay, so now let's do a few things. At this point, when we come over here to the edit page, when we play, animates in, stays, then animates out. But if we extend the clip, it doesn't continue, or we don't see our image, it still remains the same. Animates in, stays, animates out. Still the same, it doesn't change. Now, for us to get it to change and adapt to the length of the composition, which is why we call this particular stage of our animation responsive animation. It responds to the length of your clip. Let's go back to the Fusion page. Make sure your playhead is over your composition. Then come over here with the transform selected, just like before. What node will help us get that particular result? Where we just extend the clip and the animation will stay until the end of the clip before it animates out. The node that can help us do that is called Keyframe Stretcher. So shift space bar, then you type Keyframe Stretcher, and just like that, you have it here. Since we already have our transform node selected, we now press enter or just click add, and it will be connected like this. Now, at this point, when you play or you do anything, it will just be as before. Nothing changes because we have to do a few things. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to enter a few things over here in the inspector. Source start. This is the source start. This is where you want the animation to start. So in our case, frame 0. So you enter 0. We already have it set at default. So 0. And source end. This is not the end of your composition. This is the end of your animation, your last keyframe. So now, where do we have our last keyframe? With the arrow keys, we can jump until we get to our last keyframe. And here is our last keyframe. You can see it here. That is frame 120. We now go back to our keyframe stretcher and add frame 120. By default, in this case, it happens to be so. At any number that you have, you enter that number, 120. This now gives the entire length of the animation to the keyframe stretcher. Now we'll come over here to the stretch start and the stretch end. Where do we want the stretch to start and where do we want it to end? Now, since we want it to come on like this, and the first part of our animation ends at frame 30, the first part of our animation being slide in like this, it ends at frame 30, which means we want the stretch to start at that frame, but instead of entering frame 30, we just give it one frame buffer. So we enter frame 31 so that the stretch will start from frame 31. And when do you want the stretch to end? Here you go over to the last keyframe, which is 120, and just before the last keyframe you enter, so just before 120 is 199. Then we enter it here, 199. Oh, it's 119, sorry, 119, like this. And now when we play, it will be the same. Comes in, stays for a while, and then it will animate out. But this time when we come over here, comes in, stays, animates out. When we now stretch this, you see, it's now going to come in with the same speed and then stays until the end of the clip or the end of the animation before it animates out, like that. So now we can have it like this. In, stays until we get to this end of the animation before it animates out. And just like that, you have officially completed this method of keyframing. Congrats. You can do the same thing directly on this particular footage. So it's just the same process. So you see, Fusion is not as difficult as it looks. If you really want to dive deeper into it and get some core foundations of Fusion so that you can do anything, then watch this video here. Okay, this now brings us to the next part of the animation, which can be a topic on its own, but we will go through and I believe you understand. And that is anim curves. You probably have heard it before. Yes, anim curves. That's where you can do some fancy stuff with keyframes. But this method doesn't use keyframe, except if you want to use it. So now let's dive into anim curves. Let's now delete our keyframe structure and the transform tool. Let's reset it. And as you can see, anything we have here, we can actually click it. But when we look at this modifier, we cannot click. Why? This is because for us to activate this particular modifier, we have to apply modifier. I hope that makes sense. Well, the simplest way to apply a modifier to a control is, for example, the size. We just have to right click and you have this modify width. And you can select from any of these options. So you can say modify with anim curves. And now you see the modifier tab is activated. You can now click it and come over here to the anim curve to play with it. And just like gravity controls the movement or the motion, here when you play, even though you haven't made any changes at all, once you apply the modifier, when you play, it will start animating just like that. But in this case, that is not what we want. So we click the tool and we come back over here. So let's remove the modifier. Now we have it like this. What we are going to apply the anim curve to is this particular center controls. There are different ways where you have to come over here to define width, then you go to XY path or vector result. But that is not what we are going to do. Instead, what we will do to apply the anim curve is, first of all, just keyframe it the way you would normally keyframe it. Let's say, for example, frame 0, we want it off screen, just like before. And frame 30, we want it on screen, like this. So now we bring it back on screen. And now you can see once we animated it, the modifier tab is activated. So now we can click on this modifier tab and it will take us to this part. Now, this displacement, we right click it and go to insert and select anim curve. And now once we click it, it will bring us over here. And there are many different things you can do over here. If you want me to go deeper into anim curves, where I explain what each of these controls does, then let me know in the comment below. But with what we are doing, now that we have this, our animation doesn't change. It is still the same. You can now come over here and change the curve from linear to easing. And now from here, you have these options. You can select bounce. And when you play it, you have something like this. You can also select, let's say, elastic. And when you play it, you have like this. Or back. And it will overshoot and return back to the normal position like this. But if you want it to be normal, then you have to adjust the keyframe. And for example, here, and you come over here to inspector and transform, and the last keyframe, excuse me, the input, zoom to fit, and then the last keyframe, we just have to stretch it so that we have some space between them. Like this, selected, hold down the shift key so you don't move up and down. And then move it like this, and you can see the keyframe is moving. So let's take it, let's place it on like frame 60 for 2 seconds, like this. And now when you play, you have it like this. So you can set it to expo for the ease in and out, so it becomes very smooth. That is expo. Yeah. Or you can also set it to back. It will overshoot and then comes back to normal like that. You can also set it to elastic and you have it like this. Or bounce. There is bounce. And you have it like this. Now when you go to the edit page, any change you made, you will still see it over here. And just like that, you have officially learned different ways to create animations in DaVinci Resolve. There are still others, but if we choose to continue, this video will be like too long. But knowing how to animate is only scratching the surface. If you really want to understand the core foundations of Fusion, the principles that make everything finally click, so you can open Fusion with confidence instead of confusion, then watch this video next.